So this idea is that all of us have the potential for Buddhahood, and we are working on it. So we use this refuge, it becomes more abstract. It becomes something which is an ideal, which we are working on. We're trying to transform ourselves so that we can become part of that ideal too. And in this sense, the Dhamma of the Buddha becomes also something conceptual. Anything which Buddhas have taught in the past, which would lead one in the direction of enlightenment, this is the Dhamma on the cosmic level. It's not just something which starts and ends with a particular Buddha, but it's something which each new Buddha who comes into the world will reveal again, will recover, will discover. Really it's truth which is already there, but it needs for a Buddha to be astute enough to point it out to other people. Because suffering is always there, you see. But most of us are too stupid to notice it or to learn from it. And it's only the Buddha who has the penetrative knowledge to see deeply enough to learn something from this phenomena which are part of our life. The Sangha would be any community of monks or community of those who practice in a continuous and in a earnest way. The community of those who practice the Dhamma. And that would be all down the ages. Not just the most recent set of disciples of the Buddha. Sometimes there's a question whether Sangha just refers to monks or not. In the Thai context, we tend to think of Sangha as being monks. But strictly speaking, just the word Sangha means community. So it can include all people who practice the Dhamma in earnest. Usually it means the ones who have become enlightened as a result, but it can mean also those who are practicing for enlightenment too. So whether it's lay men, lay women, novices or monks, then all are Sangha in a way. On the third level of description, we can talk about the triple gem from the point of view of our Dhamma practice, where the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha become not merely concepts or ideals, but they become something which is tangible but visible only to those who meditate deeply enough that their mind becomes still enough to attain the triple gem inside of themselves. In this case, the Buddha gem would be the body of enlightenment inside oneself, the inner body of enlightenment which one can attain when one's mind becomes pure enough to see that inside oneself. In other traditions of Buddhism, sometimes they talk about it as the seed of enlightenment inside oneself. In fact, it's already there for everybody. Wherever there are human beings, then this seed of enlightenment is already there too. It is a question of bringing it forth so that it is manifest in one's life. Otherwise, it's like an underground well full of water, but for as long as no one can drill down deeply enough to reach the water, then it's no good to anyone. For us, we have the body of the Buddha, the body of enlightenment inside us too, but until we meditate deeply enough to attain it, then it's no use to us. But if we can attain it, then we can bring forth the wisdom within that body. The wisdom within the body of enlightenment of the Lord Buddha is like a sphere at the center of the body of enlightenment. And within that sphere is all the knowledge, not only of the leaves grasped in the hand of the Lord Buddha, which he talked about in the 45 books of the scriptures, but also all the leaves in the forest as well, if you remember the metaphor which I talked about on the previous lesson. So if you meditate deeply enough to that point, you could rewrite the Buddhist scriptures from scratch, because what they are written from is from the enlightenment experience or the wisdom of the Dhammakaya at the center of the Buddha. And within the center of that sphere, if you go further, then you find yet more Buddha images which help to nurture and to maintain the intactness of that Dhamma teaching at the center. This is the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha on the level of inner experience. And this is yet more universal than even the concept of the triple gem on the cosmic level, because it belongs to everybody. It is a potential within everybody. And if you ask about what is our real aim in practicing Buddhism, then it is for us to be able to attain this triple gem on the level of the inner experience, so that it can truly be our refuge. Because it's something which, even though our body may break down and die at the end of our life, but it's still there to us as a sort of lifeboat, which will help to either to take us to a new life or to be the means by which we can break free of the cycle of existence completely. So this Buddhist Concepts course is not the whole of Buddhism, but what I've done is to pick out key concepts which are the identity of Buddhism, especially things to do with the law of karma, and as I say, there's a lot more that we haven't studied because of the limitations of time. We've only been able to look at some of the more basic and fundamental concepts. But if you want to study further, then you should make the attempt to study for yourself by looking at what's actually written in the Buddhist scriptures. For those of you who've had the chance to actually open up these Buddhist scriptures, even in translation, then you may find that actually they are not particularly readable, because the subject matter of the Buddhist scriptures, firstly, is very long, 45 times the size of the Bible. Secondly, normally it's not arranged by headings. The teachings of the Buddha are organized by length. So all the long scriptures are put together in the Digha Nikaya, all the medium length teachings are put together in the Majjhima Nikaya, all the short teachings are put together in the Samyutta Nikaya, and sometimes they are put in under the same heading together, sometimes not. So sometimes it's hard to know what you are looking for. Also, sometimes they're very repetitive. Sometimes the language of the translation is very archaic. And sometimes, I'm sad to say, the translations are not very accurate. The problem with the Pali language, which they originally were written in, is that sometimes one word can have many meanings. So even a word like the Pali language is of the nature that one word can have many meanings. So if you translate it to only one of those meanings, then it means that all the other meanings have been neglected. So sometimes the best thing is to learn Pali language, and then you can know all the variety of meanings in a particular case. But given that you may not have time to learn a whole new language in order to read the scriptures, you have to take it with a pinch of salt sometimes about whether something has been translated in a literal way, or whether perhaps if you look at the whole sentence together it may have a different level of meaning. But there are easier parts of the scriptures to start with if you're interested to read from them, things like the Dhammapada. Dhammapada is like a poem almost, but one thing which is very popular in Thailand and also in Sri Lanka is that you have the Dhammapada verses, maybe 4 verses, and then there is a story to go with it. There will be a story to go with it, which will illustrate the point of those verses. So what's known as the Dhammapada commentary, or Dhammapada Atthakatha. And you can find that on the internet or in the library. Another part which is often interesting to start with is the Jataka stories, or the previous birth stories of the Lord Buddha. As I mentioned, especially for the 10 final lifetimes of the Buddha, which exemplify the way in which he pursued perfections, then these are quite inspiring, sometimes quite lengthy as well. But again, the Jatakas, in fact, are very short if you just take them from the scriptures, 1 or 2 verses, but they have a commentary on them as well. And if you read them together with the commentary, then you get all the details which we see every evening in the Dasa Jataka, the 10 final lifetimes of the Buddha stories, which are serialized on DMC. But in fact, all the Jataka stories they are like Aesop's fables in a way, that each account has a moral to it. There's a moral to the story that, if a person behaves in a certain way, then there are certain consequences. Some of the stories are about animals, some of the stories are about people. But if you look for the message behind it, then that's often quite an accessible way to read about the scriptures. There's some quite good translations about Jatakas in English, even some modern retranslations which are quite good. So those, if you are tempted to study further for yourself, then that's often a good place to start, Dhammapada or Jataka. As for the lengthier ones, then sometimes you have to hear the explanation from Venerable Tachiwo to understand what's going on sometimes. But don't be put off the scriptures by the fact that they're not easy to understand. If you keep at it, then you build up a familiarity for the way it's written, and then you can start to pick out the main things. So that is Buddhist Concepts in brief. I'll see you again this afternoon to talk about blessing number 10, which is to do with artfulness in speech.